Welcome back to the sequel to our episode on business and human rights. I'm your host Anuradha Menon. In our previous episode, we delved into the social aspect of ESG, exploring its link to responsible business practices. If you missed it, be sure to tune in and catch up. Here's a recap.
Human rights, as we normally kind of visualize in the media, across our social media, digital realm and streams, is about wokeism, right? It's about being reactive to and aligned to a particular politics. But human rights in an ESG context is not political. It is about doing things the right way. It is about treating your communities, your people, your vendors with the right dignity, with the right respect. And how does that respect look like in an everyday business context?
Now, in today's episode, we're shifting our focus to the future of work, including remote work setups, automation, and the ever-evolving employment norms that are shaping tomorrow's workplaces. With Mr. Manishankar Prasad, Vice President at Lodha & Co., sharing his expert insights on the significance of business and human rights.
So, human rights often take center stage when discussing the S element of ESG. Why is human rights the mainstay of the S element? And how do companies ensure they respect and uphold human rights within their operations and supply chains?
Thank you so much. Well, human rights has become important in the recent time when ESG reporting and global disclosure standards have been up on the corporate radar, on a regulatory agenda globally. As far as there are a plethora of legislations regarding modern slavery, starting with the UK Modern Slavery Act in 2015. There is an Australian version to it. There is also the recent forced labor law in Canada. There are corporate transparency laws in France, in Norway, and the most significant of them all is the German supply chain legislation, which mandates HRDD system within companies which have a presence within Germany and German companies which have a presence internationally. So human rights can be seen as more of a transnational kind of an umbrella, construct of regulations which is impacting businesses small and large in terms of supply chain. If you want to be compliant to big, large corporates like, for example, IKEA, or if you want to be compliant to Walmart, you need to be compliant to the forced labor indicators, and you need to be cognizant of it. And these are all a part of the human rights construct. It has become more important, rather the mainstay, because of course, global regulatory interventions in modern slavery and forced labor, and it's something which can be quantified, something which it can be measured as something significant. So the way that I see and conceptualize as a business and human rights practitioner is, human rights is something which wants to detect, intervene, and weed out any forced labor or anti-trafficking issues which happen in global value chains, especially in agriculture, especially in palm oil plantations in Southeast Asia, or for example construction supply chains in the Middle East, to name a few, or even transition mineral mining in sub-Saharan Africa, which is a very important part of the climate change paradigm. So these are all issues which are normally veering to the extreme and which can be quantified, emerge in very precarious, vulnerable, marginalized communities in conflict areas. And I think so the human rights aspect within the larger S paradigm, as we spoke about earlier in the conversation, is to weed out something which is drastic, something which is harmful in nature.
Thank you, Moni, for the wonderful insights. We've been hearing the term HRDD more frequently in conversations about ESG. What exactly does it stand for, and why is it a crucial tool for companies striving to improve their social performance and accountability? Please share your insights.
So in the last part of the conversation, we were talking about why human rights has emerged as the mantelpiece, the central story of the S narrative. So how do we actually operationalize detecting human rights abuses or violations in value chains, which are beyond the tier 1 suppliers often, which is a problem. So we use a tool called human rights due diligence, or HRDDs for short, in order to create a information management system regarding human rights to detect, evaluate, measure, screen any potential risks to the principal employer of the organization, which is primarily a listed company or a PE fund, which exposes them to transnational torts. Transnational torts is basically litigations which might emerge from anywhere in the world for any suspected human rights breach. And HRDDs are often the tool to operationalize human rights assessments and thought processes for an investee company, for a fund, to assess whether this particular company, asset, organization is worth its investment spends, or for a company to be safe from any potential human rights litigation in a transnational way, in the light of the German supply chain legislation. The EU has corporate sustainability disclosures which mandate an HRDD as well. So in this light of emerging regulatory risks, HRDD is often the entry point and the mainstay for organizations to help assess these risks in a very tangible manner.
Thank you for the clarification. So, as we move toward the future of work with remote setups, automation, and shifting employment dynamics, how does this tie up into the broader ESG conversation? How do you think companies factor in these changes when addressing the S element of ESG?
Well, the best part of any ESG conversation is that it is future facing. It looks towards the future. There are emergent risks. Economies are dynamic. Labor markets are dynamic. And technology drives our modernity forward. Technology, digitization, automation, these are not only buzzwords, but these are affecting the landscapes of work or the worlds of work. As my former labor geography professor in Singapore used to teach a course on this, and the worlds of work are being affected by automation and digitization to a large extent. So how do companies grapple with these emerging risks and challenges? Through ESG is a very good paradigm because it looks towards the future. So how do you look at the shop floor where there is a lot of automation and robotics and everything with it, with EVs being manufactured and everything, and there is very little human intervention even needed over there. So how does human rights figure in such a context? Yes, it does, because the human at the end of the day, or the machine operator or the plant operator at the end of the day, is still looking at the processes and systems from a very, very physical standpoint, right? Pointing out the errors, doing quality assurance. So let's at least make sure that the operator is provided lunch breaks, has a clean toilet to go to, and has the basic facilities such as a canteen to at least access these basic services. So in the worlds of work, in the realm of automation and digitization, doesn't mean that we reduce the aspect of the human in this entire calculus. Rather, the human becomes even more imperative because the human drives the direction of the work, or rather make sure that whatever automation is taking place is happening for the business in the right way. So the role of the human becomes even more strategic in nature rather than tactical, and we need to look after the human rights or the right of the human in such a context. Regarding the digital realm, we often have issues regarding privacy, cybersecurity, anti-troll, anti-cyberbullying, and there are so many emerging aspects regarding how our worlds are being determined by the digital realm, in terms of how we are almost like data points on a screen, right? In many ways. So how is our data being protected? In the era of AI and general AI, especially in the future, how do we make sure that we have privacy in place? How do we make sure that cyberbullying doesn't happen to us? And how do we ensure that businesses are cognizant of such emerging risks? And ESG and the S element within ESG, which is tied into human rights, is an excellent framework to basically place the human in the center of the conversation, which is the future of work.
Thank you, Moni, for joining us today and taking a deep dive into the often less understood but incredibly important S element of ESG. Any concluding thoughts?
Well, the concluding thoughts is that we have a lot of buzzwords and jargons around in the ESG and in the BHR realm. Let's think about these things, what it means to individual businesses, and what's the context of ESG within these businesses, in order for these businesses to use ESG or business and human rights as a tool to drive business value and business innovation, but also to keep their social license to operate within the larger communities of practice in place. And ESG is wonderful, it's progressive, it's future facing, and it ensures businesses with the heart to do better for the customers. Ultimately, that's business is for. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
If you're inspired by today's conversation and wish to engage with us or even participate in our podcast series, please contact us at esg@lodhaco.com. Your insights and perspectives are valuable to us. Thank you.